Entering the ring is Class 1 4-H Market Beef.
Or not. What was the volume on? No, it was on. Sorry, everybody. We have a loose cow. I was just kidding around. Here we go.
Okay, you're going to walk in, okay?
All right.
Of
course.
Go side by side.
Wait, come over here.
Currently in the ring is Class 1. This is the first call for Class 2. Please start making your way to the ringside.
Right here, come to me. Perfect. Right there. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks. I think everything. Good.
Well, an exciting way to start out the beef show, particularly for one young lady, but only 3 steers, so it makes it relatively simple, and 3 that are very different in type and kind. I think that for me, the one that combines the most good is the young man's right here in the middle. I think that one, in terms of having the right amount of body condition, particularly in his forerib, I think that one's just about right in terms of fat thickness. When we get right behind him, I think he's the most opened up at the top of his rump. He's probably the biggest back steer. The one that, to me, I like his flank line or his underline probably the best of the 3. Then I guess it's a tough decision between the young man on the far side and the young lady's very athletic steer. Just to talk about him briefly, the young lady's has more muscularity. That one's arguably the most shapely steer in class, but to me, I think he's the most, or the driest in his rear flank, and maybe the leanest in terms of condition. And then the young man's is the one that's probably looser to his rear flank, has some more body condition, but that one's just probably a little too narrow and a little too flat. And when I get behind him, there's just not enough meat animal shape. I'm going to go ahead and use the young lady's more athletic steer to go ahead and be second, followed by the young man's at a close third.
I got it. Yeah, I got it. You'll exit out that gate back.
In first place, we have Cord Peak. Second place, Wade Van Nest. and in third place, Kiara Delgado. Second place was Kiara Delgado, and in third place was Wade Van Ness. Next in the ring, we will have Class 2 4-H market beef weighing 1,300 to 1,360 pounds. Ring is Class 2 4-H market beef. This is the first call for Class 3. Please make your way to the ringside.
Okay.
Yeah. Next one. Zoe, come on.
We're gonna walk out and then end up back here. We probably, well, actually, no, we'll be all right.
Well, another fun class to judge and sort through, and in my opinion, I think there's one that just kind of walks away with this thing in terms of sheer muscle volume. I think one that I think is sound enough. If I were to be hypercritical of the young man's steer that's circling, I'd like to see that one's tailhead maybe lay in just a little bit neater at the top of his rump. I think that one gets maybe just a little bit high to its rear flank in relation to its chest. But that one's the boldest in its rib cage. It's the most opened up down low, and consequently up high, that dude's got the most muscle over his rib and loin. Now, I think it becomes a little bit closer for Seguin, but I think there's one that's maybe just a little more up-headed, a little more extended through the front one-third of its body. A steer that, if I were to get hypercritical of it, I'd like to see some more depth, particularly in its rear flank. But we'll use the young ladies in the middle for second. And then the one that's on the far end, I think, if we're just looking at their underline, I think this one's the most correct. I think this one's a little bit softer to its rear flank. It's probably the more moderately sized or more compact steer. But unfortunately, that one's top line is kind of made up and I guess needs to be more so complete. That steer's maybe a little bit lower fronted, steer that I'd like to change up from a balance standpoint. But a nice group of three. The top two will come back for a run.
In first place is Hayden Brooks. Second place, Zoe Daly. And third place, Justin Brooks. Next in the ring, we have Class 3 of 4-H market beef.
Dude, you're on it. The higher you yesterday. You're higher tomorrow. I'm not.
up right up here. Try and stay close to the
Currently in the ring is Class 3. Following this, we will have the 4-H drive.
There we go. I think a really interesting pair of steers that comprise our last class, and two that are polar opposites in terms of their type and kind. Just to talk about them briefly, the smoky steer that we have in here, I think, is one that in terms of stoutness of structure you have to like. I think that one's skin and hair looks really good. He's a steer that, to me, in terms of length and extension, you have to like an awful lot. I just think that we've got maybe too much daylight between the show surface and his flank line. He's one that maybe gets a little crusty necked and maybe just a little funky in terms of, again, the way that tailhead sets in. But he's one that's probably the stouter constructed, maybe sounder structured steer that, again, I like the way that that one's presented from a skin and hair standpoint. And then we've got the more mellow steer that's, in terms of body condition, a steer that's definitely carrying more body condition over his tint. He's a steer that, to me, is probably the more durably constructed steer that's more robust in terms of rib shape. When I get behind this guy, he offers more pounds of, I guess, product. He's probably the more product-driven steer, and to me, I think that's the one that probably fits the mold of the more production-driven type that needs to go ahead and win this class. Not to take anything away from the Charlet steer, but we're going to go ahead and go 1 and then 2.
You guys will exit out that gate, but we'll keep you. How do you want to do this drive?
Just we'll bring in first, and then the seconds from
Okay.
those last things.
As long as their heads over there, like.
Just up line.
Okay.
First place is Connor Allen, and second place, Riley Urton. Now in the ring, we will have the 4-H drive.
They're going to be behind me. Circle around.
You're good. You're good. He's the lightest. There you go. Yeah.
Try and do a side view.
There you go. Ford, come over here. No, only when the first gets close. Because I don't come around.
Currently in the ring is the 4-H champion drive. This is the first call for Class 4 FFA market beef.
Well, unfortunately, the beef show and the 4-H division is relatively small, but I think in the upper end of things, I think we've got a pretty close competition, which makes it fun. To me, I keep going back and forth between the two towards my right. Our heavyweight steer, to me, is the one that just, again, fits that mold of production driven. I think that of the three, and I know I talked about him in class, that he might not have been as sound structured as the Charlet. I still think that in here, that's the soundest structured one in terms of the angles to his skeleton. He's the one that, to me, offers the most dimension of rib. He's the one that's the most opened up down low in his skeleton. He's one that, for me, probably doesn't have the most muscle shape, and the one in the middle is definitely that one. When you get your hands on him over, again, his rib and loin, he's got the most square muscle dimension. He's one that gets a little bit straighter in his hind leg. He's one that, again, is a little funky in the way that his tail head lays in, and those are just some very little nitpicky things that works him maybe down in the division. We're going to go ahead and use the one up front as our champion in the 4-H division.
Yeah, 9 is the Charlotte.
I think when we work the Charlet in, I think his advantages definitely lie in structural soundness. I think that guy's got a more functional set to his hind leg. He's one that, again, we talked about him in class being very up-headed, tall-shouldered, one that from a length perspective we really like. I guess I get hypercritical of him down at the base of his rib cage. He not only gets flat, but he gets real dry, and so sometimes those more exotic breeds tend to maybe not drop their belly or drop their rear flank, and maybe give the young people a challenge to just put fat condition on him. And he's probably just a little too bare for me today to go ahead and use in reserve. We're going to go ahead and use the young man here in the middle with the more mellow steer.
Alright, out this way. Don't put your steers up. Drop your back.
Connor Allen, and reserve champion goes to Hayden Brooks. We have Class 4 FFA Market Beef. Please make your way to the ringside.
Good. Happening. I got everything
Class
installed.
4
I had the
FFA
website all
Market
done,
Beef.
and
This
your old,
is the
your old
first
site got a
call for
virus.
Class 5.
Wiped out all my work. It's okay.
Right here. And walk over here.
Well, I think this class becomes very easy and manageable to sort, particularly when we've got a real nice one that walks in, and I think really takes the class away. And not only is this one muscular and masculine when you study him from a muscle standpoint, but when we get off to the side of this guy, I think he's assembled the most correctly. I think he's the one that, in terms of neck placement out of the top of his shoulder, he's the best. He's got just a nice natural swoop to his top. He's very sound structured. Maybe if I were to get hypercritical of him, he wants to toe out just a fraction up front, but that's being nitpicky of one that I think just kind of steamrolls this particular class. I think then as we get down into second, a steer that for me is very meat and potatoes. I think he's one that's sound structured. He's good in terms of his flank line, and arguably in comparison to our champion, he may be softer through his rear rib and flank. The problem with this guy is he just simply gets outmassed and outhorsed. He's narrower at the top of his hip, maybe not quite as powerful in terms of muscle shape. And I think that the one in third has an advantage in terms of muscle. This dude, when you get your hands on him right on the backside of his shoulder, he's very muscled up. He's big at the top of his hip, flared out to his pin bones. The problem with your steer, young lady, is he's too straight structured. When he gets on the move, he's too tight, knuckles and pops in his pasterns. He's too straight in his hind leg. He's one from a soundness standpoint. I have some concerns, and that's really what works him down into that third place position. Now, if you were more of a fan of one that is sound or moving, you pick the all-white steer. I think he's one that's very practical in terms of movement. He's very soft in his center body. The problem is when we get to the rear portion of this steer and the one that ends up rounding out the class, there's just not enough meat animal shape. There's not enough power. Those steers just want to flatten up too much today to compete with our top two steers that will ultimately come back for our champion runoff. Congratulations to you two young ladies.
In first place, we have Haley Frederick. Second place, Juanita Joseph. Third place, Tara Rossi. Fourth place, Lacey Lehigh. And in fifth place, Anastasia Harvey. Next in the ring, we will have Class 5 of FFA Market Beef. Currently in the ring is Class 5. This is the first call for Class 6. Please make your way to ringside.
New look for you girls this year, huh?
What?
It's a new look for you girls this year. Huh?
Yeah, it's terrible.
Well, I think there's no challenge in finding the one that ends up winning in this class. Again, a very easy place to tie to. A steer that, for me, I think from a foundational standpoint is a sound structure, good-bodied steer that, again, when we get behind him, I think he offers the most power in this particular class. I think the decision needs to be made between second and third, and I think basically if we combine both those steers, we have the one that ends up winning. And just to talk about those two, I think the one in second is the one that has offers more body condition, and why he's in that second place position versus the one in third is I think that steer is probably the more acceptable steer in terms of fat thickness. I think he offers, again, a more powerful rear view, but he's one that off to the side, you really want to punch some holes in this guy. He deviates right behind his shoulder. He's a little low in his neck set. He's a little short-necked, and that's where the one in third holds an advantage. That guy from the side is without a doubt the better steer. He's more correct in terms of his hip and hind leg. He's the one that's more extended, again, through the front one-third of his body. The problem is when we get right behind him, not only is he maybe bare right in his forerib in terms of fat condition, but he's one that wants to get more so peaked in terms of muscularity. He's just not as powerful, not as muscular when we get right behind him. I think then the two steers that end up rounding out the class are very similar in terms of their conformation, steers that are assembled in a very similar fashion in terms of depth of side and robustness when we get off to the side view. But the problem is that those two steers want to flatten up too much for me today when we get off to the rear. And then for me, when we sort both of those, the one that ends up rounding out the class, the main difference is that one's just too straight. Again, in terms of his hind leg, he maybe wants to hawk in just too much for me today. But a nice pair of two that'll come back for our champion run.
In first place, we have Michael Dibmar. Second place, Toby Robinson. Third place, Chris Nelson. Fourth place, Abram Jimenez. And in fifth place, Austin Van Ness. Next in the ring, we will have Class 6 of FFA Market Beef.
Yeah, well, that's what they've all been. I said, we're going to get that thing filled up one way or another.
Currently in the ring is Class 6 of FFA Market Beef. Following this, we will have the FFA Drive.
Well, I think this class from top to bottom has offered the most quality, even down into our final placing. I think there's some good things to say, and when we get up into the top pair, two steers that are very similar in terms of their look. To me, I think there's one steer that's the bigger hip steer, the steer that offers more muscle, steer that to me is maybe just a little bit better built up through the front 1/3 of its body. And then I think there's one that's maybe the more shapely option, one that to me is maybe more correct in terms of the set to its pastern and hock, but maybe just a little bit lower fronted, one that wants to maybe narrow up just a fraction more to the top of its rump structure. To me, I think the bigger hipped option, the one that's maybe just a little bit better looking or profiling from the side, and particularly up front, is going to be the young lady's that's to the left. She'll go ahead and win the class, followed closely by the young lady up front that'll be second. I think then we've got a steer that comes into third that's probably the most different of the four. Steer that in terms of extension you have to like an awful lot. I think he's probably the one that from his chest up through his breastplate, his neck set, I think you have to like him an awful lot. It's just when we get right behind him, he wants to narrow up to his hock. He's just a little bit narrower, again, in terms of his hip structure. He's one that, for me, is maybe just a little bit barer in terms of body condition. And then the steer that ends up rounding out the class, you probably heard that term that I've used today, meat and potatoes. That's what this steer definitely is. He's sound structured, he's big body. The problem is he's just kind of built in a course-made package. He separates at his shoulder, deviates in terms of his top line, but without a doubt a steer that we need to be proud of, a steer that definitely deserves to sell. Congratulations, you top two will come right back in for our champion run.
In first place, we have Rebecca Sosi. Second place, Isabella Morgenstein. Third place, Paul Olin. And in fourth place, Hector Martinez. Now in the ring, we will have the FFA drive.
Okay, we'll start with Haley. We're going to leave second for ringside. Okay. Michael and Rebecca. Do you want to say something? Got it? In a straight line. Right here? Yeah. There you go, then stay right behind you. Perfect. Cool down.
There we go. Well, again, another small show, just like the 4-H show, and to me, you've probably heard me talk today about production traits and functionality and things that are very basic, and there really hasn't been a steer that had hit me today that I could really talk about some extras. And when I talk about extras, those things that I'm talking about are sharpness of shoulder, the way that the neck comes out of the top of that shoulder blade, length of hip, levelness of top, athleticism in terms of their skeletal build, things that are just a little bit extra. And I think that there's one in here that not only is different in terms of coloration, but there is one that is very different in terms of its skeletal mold, the way that it moves around the ring, the way that it looks, and to be honest with you, it just stamps that show steer look. And to me, I think not only does this one have what it takes from a market animal standpoint, but this one's got all the bells and whistles to go ahead and be our champion. We'll go ahead and crown the young lady on the end as our grand champion in the upper pack.
Feel him out and just set him up.
Juanita, you can just go where she went.
No, you're fine right there. Don't move. You're right in front.
Stay there.
Following this, we will have the Supreme Drive, so Connor Allen and Hayden Brooks, please be ringside.
Alright, we need to walk him and then just right back where we're at.
He's like 416 pounds or something. He's a big boy. I had to bullfight him a few times at the farm.
Well, I think it's a really close decision between a steer that I think the one on the end has more than enough body condition, and in terms of what you've done with the feed bucket, young lady, you've done a perfect job. Also, I want to commend you in terms of hair coat, clip job, condition. I think you've done an excellent job with this steer. Something that you can affect, though, is their rear wheels, and I think that that one's maybe just a little bit straighter. I catch him wanting to knuckle and pop just a fraction more than some of the other steers in class. He's one that also maybe in comparison to the one up front, maybe isn't quite as clean or as neat up through his chuck and plate, but a steer that I like an awful lot from a presentation standpoint and body condition standpoint. Then we've got a steer on this end that I think is more functionally correct in terms of his rear wheel placement. I think he's a steer that, if you study him up front, I think he's probably the neater and cleaner steer. He's one that, for me, maybe is just a little bit barer in terms of body condition and maybe a little bit drier in terms of his rear flank. But for me, I don't think he's dry enough or light enough condition to be anywhere lower than reserve champion. We're going to go ahead and use him as our reserve champion steer.
Congratulations, your FFA champion steer goes to Haley Fredericks, and your reserve champion goes to Juanita Joseph. The Supreme Drive.
So guys, let's spin around and let's do a side view just like you were in.
Well, the steer show is so small, it's hard to forget the steers in their particular classes, so I won't take any more time evaluating the livestock, I mentioned this in the last shows, I believe this is the only live steer show that's happened in the state of California, or one of very few, and I think it's really important to not only commend the young people for a job well done, but our staff that's put this together. I really appreciate the opportunity to come out and judge and evaluate the market animals. For the huge crowd that's out here, will you put your hands together and give them a round of applause, please? Now, to get into the cattle, I think that there's a drastic difference in terms of type and kind amongst the two groups. I think on the 4-H side, we've got two steers that, again, from a production standpoint, I think they're big-footed, stout-structured steers that have quite a bit of meat animal shape or muscularity. When we get right behind them, steers that you've got to appreciate from a functionality and production standpoint. And then we've got two steers on the far side that without a doubt have those same characteristics in terms of muscularity. But when you study them in terms of look, in terms of eye appeal, I think they without a doubt supersede our 4-H division. Our champion overall and reserve champion overall is going to go to the FFA. Let's go ahead and give them a round of applause.
Congratulations, your Supreme Champion steer goes to Haley Frederick, and Reserve Supreme Champion goes to Juanita Joseph.
Good job.
Come from?
Entering the ring is Class 1 4-H Junior Showmanship.
What's your name, bud? What is it? Oh, just kidding. Never mind. Where's number 4?
Currently in the ring is Class 1. This is the first call for Class 2. Please make your way to ringside.
Sticks up a little more. There you go. Good. Better. Good. Well, the boys look angry as it is to be out here, so I won't keep you guys out here too much longer. But something to maybe think about when you come into showmanship. It really shouldn't be any different than market. And I think that you guys are probably competitive. I don't know if you play sports or I don't like to lose. Losing makes me very frustrated. And so, when you guys come in, if you're anything like me, you need to kind of have that I want to win attitude. And I guess something that's very positive is when you first came in, I was wondering if you all were half asleep. And then after I told you, okay, let's kind of wake up a little bit, you guys showed a little more enthusiasm, which is very positive. Something that I guess just to go through and talk about each of the showmen, since we only have three, I think that the young man on the far left is someone that, to me, you are very calm around your steer. I think that steer is just like a dog for you, just wants to act just about right. He's probably the best behaved steer. The problem with that is he's a little bit asleep. And so if you need to, you can kind of pinch that elbow in and just jerk his head up a little more, wake him up just a fraction more. I think that would make him just look just a little bit better. But I really appreciate the way that you kind of corrected the way you position yourself in front of that steer, because when you're walking right at shoulder, I guess at that steer's shoulder, or if you're kind of tucked in with him, it doesn't silhouette the steer. So you really want to highlight the steer as best you can. You're tall and long, so you're able to kind of get away from him a little more, and that should work to your advantage. The young man that's right here in the middle, I like your positivity. I like your attitude. I said, hey, let's get a little more excited about this, and I think you said yippee, and I really appreciate that, okay? To be a little more excited in the show ring. That steer, I think he's one that's maybe a little more so spicy. Today he wanted to kind of maybe pass that steer up front, but then when he gets set, he just kind of stands there and hangs out. And I think that that's a very positive thing, that you work with your steer and you're able to come out here and present him to the best of your ability. And then the young man on the far end, I think that you're, again, a very serious showman. Maybe one thing to think about and maybe think about as you progress in your show career, when you guys need to pull these things out of line, make a big wide circle and then almost parallel park them. Okay, don't turn them right in on each other, and you did that a couple of times with your steer. You're the only one out here that has the correct comb, okay? You've got a plastic comb, which we should all have plastic combs in our pocket. Plastic because if they fall out and a steer steps on them, it'll break the comb, it won't stab them. But make sure that the teeth are facing you, okay? Not facing out, okay, is the only thing that I would say. But you're a very good showman as well, and it becomes very close between the young man on the far left and the one on the far right. We're going to use the young man right here to be our champion, followed by the young man on the far side as reserve.
In first place, we have Cord Peak. Second place, Connor Allen. And in third place, Wade Van Ness. To 4-H Senior Showmanship.
a fun group of show people, and you know, for me, I think it's important to learn a few things as you progress in your showmanship career. This group on this side, go ahead and turn your eyes to the young lady over here. One thing that she does differently than what this group does is you notice her hand is turned over like this versus like this. She's got it turned over in the proper way. She's got her belt buckle kind of facing the point of the shoulder of that steer, and then she's kind of scratching that chest. Now, one thing that I would, I guess, recommend, young lady, you're kind of sawing at that steer. Let's go just a little bit easy. I think that's the nerves kind of kicking in, but just nice and easy with it. I think that that's something that she does awfully nice, does a good job posing with that steer. And then something that's also kind of cool, go ahead and walk that steer forward and then set him up again. If you watch the way she's going to walk and then go ahead and set him up wherever. See how she turns and then almost walks that steer into place. And I know you're grabbing your ribbons, and those are very important. But one reason why she wins, or I guess would win for so far today of all the showmen we've seen, is she turns and then walks that steer in position. An excellent showman and one that wins rather quickly. Congratulations, young lady. You're our Supreme Champion of the 4-H division. I think then it becomes very close, and you know, I might have made a mistake and not caught the young lady here when I touched your steer. I'm not certain if you took that comb and brushed him. From what I saw is you didn't, and the young man that ends up being third did, so I want to commend you, young man, for scratching that steer. I just think that the young lady might do a better job of getting her steer kind of propped up and set up from time to time, and I realize we didn't spend a lot of time in the show ring. It's hot, you're wearing a mask, we're hungry. You know, everything's going to go south from here on forward. So it could have worked you longer, but I don't think that it's necessary. I think the young lady maybe does a better job of, again, kind of getting her feet together, getting up in front of that steer, and maybe presenting herself along with the steer just a fraction better. I want to commend you on using that comb. And then the young man that has had a pretty good day in the market show, had his steer out here maybe a little bit longer than some of these, and he's wanting to be just a little bit extra. And that's just kind of bad luck. He's wanting to spin on you, maybe not act quite right, but for me, the young lady, I think, just does an excellent job. Congratulations to our champion in reserve.
In first place, we have Riley Urton. Second place, Zoe Daly. Third place, Justin Brooks. And in fourth place, Hayden Brooks. Next in the ring, we have Class 3 of FFA Advanced East Showmanship. Currently in the ring is Class 3. This is the first call for Class 4. Please make your way to the ringside.
Well, I think it becomes challenging to find three in here to come back for our champion runoff, but there's one very easy place to start in this particular division. So for those of you parents on the outside wondering, why doesn't my kid make it back to the champion runoff? It would be because just like in our last class or in our champion runoff for the seniors in the 4-H division, there was one winner in that particular class that showed very similarly to the young lady who's setting up her steer now. She walks that steer into place. Of course, he's going to be ornery right now, but that's a steer or a young lady, excuse me, that does a very nice job with her steer. She walks out in front of that steer, keeps that stick up high, walks him into place, does all those basic things of what a good steer showman or cattle showman needs to have. Now, I think that the three individuals that are to my left of her, I think they do an excellent job of being very serious. They're very intense showmen. There's some little things that we need to work on. You probably noticed me having a conversation with the young man and his predominantly white steer. That young man does a very good job. You're very serious. That steer is like a dog. He sets up for you every time. Just needed to change you just a fraction. So parents on the outside or FFA advisors have a little coach-up session with these four, because these four are going to come back for a champion runoff. Let's put our hands together for the four of them. And I don't want to take anything away from the three that won't make it back. A number of things probably happened for the three. Either those steers are wanting to get a little squirrely on them. They're not doing little things such as, again, their feet placement, the way that they hold that halter, the way that they set feet up. Again, if you could try to emulate what this young lady does, you'll have a good shot in our champion runoff.
Moving on from Class 3 is Juanita Joseph, Chris Nelson, Hector Martinez, and Austin Van Ness. Next in the ring, we have Class 4 FFA Advanced Showmanship. Currently in the ring is Class 4. Following this, we have the FFA Final Drive.
He's on his way to get the battery or something.
There he goes. You know, this class, I think, for me, is the most competitive from top to bottom. So for you three on this side of things, please don't feel discouraged. I think you would have been in that upper group in our last class. For me, I think that, you know, it's very important that you kind of have a show person look in showmanship. And to me, you know, I think that each one of them could work on just, again, their body positioning. When you guys are with your steers and maybe parents, when you go home, take a steers. If there's any way that they can, you know, again, try to silhouette those calves or get away from those calves just a little bit more, so that the judge can get a true view of the steers without the individual kind of in that same neckline. I think that's probably, as a whole, the one thing that all three of them could change. Now, I think that this group here probably does a better job of that. The three young ladies, and I don't know, I think maybe it's just a woman thing that you're more detail-oriented. Those three probably surface to the top of this group just a little bit quicker. Young man, make sure that you pay attention to feet placement just a little bit more. Your steer wants to get a little bunched up at times, but I think a really good group of four in a highly competitive class. We'll come back for our champion runoff, and we'll see how they can compete against our first class of FFA advance. Congratulations.
Moving on from Class 4 is Tara Rossi, Isabella Morgenstein, Paul Olin, and Rebecca Sosi. Now in the ring, we will have the FFA final drive.
Well, before we get too deep into the showmanship aspect of this, I firstly want to say thank you for allowing me to come out and not only evaluate the sheep and the goats, but the cattle as well. The market steer was a joy to evaluate, and showmanship's been that much more fun. But I just think that no matter where you place today, this event is without a doubt a win. Because I don't know about all of you, but I've been kind of over Zoom meetings, WebExes, being locked in the house, not really knowing what to do or what's going to come next. And this is just kind of an excellent bright spot for hopefully more shows to come in the future. You know, as far as the showmen are concerned, you know, I think that for me, from top to bottom, this champion drive has been an exquisite group of showmen, but particularly up in these top three, it becomes very close between the three young ladies. And just to talk about them a little bit individually, I think that the young lady on the far side is one of those, again, very calm and very serious showmen. She has done an excellent job when it comes to, and we talked about this in market, not that it's everything, so don't take this and run with it, but skin and hair, she's done the best job of anyone that we've seen today. That she's without a doubt worked the blower, worked the garden hose at home, you know, cool room, whatever you've got going on. It seems like she's not only has the right genetic partner when it comes to hair, but she's put in the work when it comes to hair, and I want to commend that because I know how much effort that takes at home. Aside from that, she's a great showman from a presentation standpoint. I think the young lady in the middle does an excellent job as well. Again, a very serious showman, someone that definitely wants to win. That calf at times wants to maybe act up just a fraction, and I don't think that any one of them has been absolutely perfect. And then for me, if you could maybe stand just a fraction more out in front of your steer, that would be ideal to me. And then I guess what you just did right there is the lesson of the day for the three young ladies. When you guys come out when you go out and peel a circle, it's not a big, wide, egg-shaped circle in this fashion where we go deep into the show ring. It's more of an oval in the fashion that we come this way and then parallel park. And I don't know if you guys have driven a car before, but if you come out real wide and come in at a very steep angle, there's no way you can parallel park. It's impossible. So you have to kind of come in at an angle that's appropriate, come in and then get in line with the three steers instead of do a real harsh circle. And the young lady up front, I would say that's probably the only thing that I would change about what you do. You know, that circle that you pulled out, and I wish you wouldn't have done it because it just left a sour taste in my mouth. And that's what makes it close between you and the young lady on the far side. But if we look at just the way you're presenting your animal, we're set up in the appropriate profile position. You do a good job of keeping that one's head up. You're not too over fidgety in terms of the way you use that show stick. And I don't think that circle that irritated me is enough to get you out of the champion hole. We're going to go ahead and use you as our champion overall showman in the FFA division. Congratulations. Followed very closely by the young lady on the far side in reserve. Congratulations again.
Good job, Juanita.
Good job, young lady. You're third overall. Excellent. Good job, young lady. Okay, nice job.
In first place, we have Juanita Joseph. Second place, Rebecca Sosi. Third place, Tara Rossi. Fourth place, Isabella Morgenstein. And fifth place, Paul Olin. Congratulations.